The event. Thanks to everybody for joining us. If you're just joining us for ARVR Innovate today, just do check out the vendor booths. Don't forget that we have a live networking sessions on as well throughout the day. And as was mentioned, we have got passes for the Dublin Tech Summit. That's on the 17th of June. We have 5 passes each day. All you have to do is hashtag ARVR Innovate and hashtag TU Dublin Open Labs to do so. Now we're moving on to the panel, which is the area curator panel. Hi, Mark. Thanks again, Mark Sage, for joining us today and for curating a panel, which I know people are going to look forward to very much indeed. The area has been associated with the ARVR Innovate since pretty much the start of the event, and every year Mark curates a really great panel, and he has delivered again in spades this year. So thanks for that, Mark. Just I will name check Mark, and he'll introduce the panel. Mark is the Executive Director for the Augmented Reality Enterprise Alliance, which is the only global member-based organization focusing on accelerating adoption of augmented reality in enterprise. And he himself has had many hats in his career. He's been a product owner, a creator, a marketer, an innovation and business case development executive, and has a lot of experience across the telecoms, IoT, and more recently augmented reality sector. So without further ado, to introduce the area panel, I will leave you in the good hands of Mark Sage. Mark.
Thanks, Alex, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Super excited to be at ARVR Innovate again. Not as excited as being actually in Dublin, having been there for a few times at this event. It's a great event, great kind of atmosphere and a great kind of party afterwards. So hopefully next year we'll be there. As Alex said, I'm super pleased to introduce some of the area members and also leading companies in the augmented reality enterprise space. And today we're going to be particularly focusing on head-mounted displays or head-mounted devices. It's really exciting and doesn't happen very often. I can get 3 HMD companies, AR HMD companies together. So I'm super excited. What I'm going to do is ask them to introduce themselves, talk a little bit about their company and themselves. And then I've got a number of questions that I'm keen to ask, but just as important, I'm keen to get questions from you out there in the audience. So please feel free to type them into the stage bit. These guys are super real experts in the space, so looking forward to them. So what I'm going to do is ask them to introduce themselves, and just because it's top of my screen, Keith, I'm going to start with you.
Thank you, Mark. So Keith Russell, I am the Director of Enterprise Sales for Magic Leap in EMEA. My focus is on working with customers and working with our ISV partners to do solutions around enterprise. As you may know, Magic Leap did a pivot last year to focus on the enterprise space. I'm recently on board, but come on board as part of that whole move into focusing on enterprise customers. So very pleased to be along today to speak with such esteemed company.
Thank you, Keith. John, you're next on my list.
Good morning. John Arnold. I'm VP of Sales for Europe, Middle East and Africa for RealWear. I'm based in the UK on the South Coast and been with the company for just under 2 years. RealWear is a wearable computing company, clearly, and we are really engaged in extending digitization into what I would call austere work environments. And we are very much a platform for an ecosystem of software partners.
Thanks, John. Thank you very much. And now we move over to Europe and introduce Johan.
Hello, my name is Johan de Geyter. I am the CEO of Iristick, and Iristick is a company that manufactures a range of head-mounted devices. So everybody knows our traditional model that is used indoor, and we recently launched this head-mounted device that is also geared towards intrinsically safe environments. So we are, as the colleagues here, manufacturers of head-mounted devices typically towards industrial environments.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. So We've just had a great talk about VR. We are going to be focusing on AR. So just to set the clear what AR is, it's about putting digital content on top of the real world, and we're going to be talking from an enterprise perspective. Now, one of the problems we suffer right across the industry is about terminology. There's so many words that get bandied around. So what I'm going to task these three gentlemen to do is talk about augmented reality and assisted reality and what the differences are between them as well, just to kind of create that education and help you begin to understand. So this time I'm going to go back around the same way. I'm going to start with Keith and ask John and ask Johan their kind of thoughts on it. And then when we come to the next questions, we're going to go backwards. We're going to start with Johan. But Keith, you have a particular device offering. Can you talk a little bit about what your device does and your thoughts on augmented and assisted reality?
Yeah, like you said, it's a lot of terminology being used in this space. Mixed reality, spatial computing. I'd add those into the mix. To me, it kind of breaks down into more around the use case, which is if I am a field engineer, I am maintaining or servicing a particular piece of kit in the field. I want my hands free. Then I'm probably going to go down the wearables route. So that probably is the start point of that. It's down to understanding what information, what content do we need to feed that person in the field. So, I'm sure John will talk, in a second how, RealWear came up with this wonderful phrase, assisted reality. And I think that was a gem of an idea, because it allowed people to understand that you're assisting the worker. You're not, you're keeping clear line of sight, which is very important for a lot of roles, and you're keeping hands free. Where we come in is the next step across, if you like, and so we're in full augmented reality. So we are putting a device in front of your eyes. We are putting lenses in front of your eyes, and then we're able to project really kind of rich content in terms of 3D objects, videos, diagrams, live links to your back-end systems, IoT data, all sorts of things. You're basically, having a fully wearable computer on board and able to have a really kind of rich experience. Now, particularly what Magic Leap focuses on is that kind of 3D element, so the ability to load a 3D CAD model or load a 3D data model and have it sit correctly in space. Now that could be alongside a physical replica of it, so you could be loading a digital twin, or it could be the fact that when you approach, let's say, an aero engine to do some work on it, arrows tell you which bits to take off first, and those arrows are actually pointing onto the physical object itself. And as you move your head around, the arrows don't move, the arrows are locked onto the object. So it's placing graphical content, rich content in its correct 3D space, and having that ability to walk around it, which previously up until now has been only available in VR. So if you like, it's about taking that 3D capability of VR and bringing it into a more of an augmented reality experience, a mixed reality experience, where you're not isolated from the rest of the world. You can see all the objects around you, you can see the physical things, but at the same time you get all these 3D graphics, video, etc. And that's our focus, if you like, in that kind of augmented, mixed, spatial kind of zone.
Thanks, Keith. That really helps. John, let's go on to more of the assisted reality and the benefits, or sorry, the use cases you can do there.
Well, thank you, Keith, because you've helped to explain a lot of what I was going to mention. That's great. And I don't have to differentiate between what I would see as augmented reality and assisted reality. And in the spectrum of the XR, so the extended reality piece, we have reality, assisted reality, augmented reality, and VR. And where I would see assisted reality as being key here is assisted reality is about the real world first and the digital world second. And what I mean by that is, as Keith has just very clearly mentioned, VR and AR, augmented reality, is about training people in an environment that is non-hazardous. Assisted reality is about giving users enough information, bite-sized bits of information, in an environment that is potentially hazardous, where they have to have situational awareness, where they could be in a kinetic environment, i.e. things are moving around quite quickly, and therefore not having too much information is the right thing. Because if you immerse them in information, then that is potentially a danger. So assisted reality is, as I say, digital, real life first, and just delivering the right amount of information in real time at the right time. And the use cases are many, from working potentially in a connected automated factory where a user operator has to be able to work with robotics from an IoT perspective, and therefore it's the machine-man interface that is very relevant here. It could be in a digital workflow environment where an operator is having to maintain say a blowout valve on an oil rig, where there might be a 30-stage maintenance regime, and the headset is helping to maintain that. Or it could be in the very well understood example today of remote mentoring. So somebody is in an environment where they need some help. Again, it could be in a automated factory, it could be on an oil rig, it could be anywhere. It could be maintaining an engine on an aircraft. And they can call home, they can call a friend, phone a friend, as we can say in that expression, and get some expertise to help them maintain that equipment. And in the context of what we've seen over the last, where people have been unable to travel, then that has been enormously beneficial. So that's how I define the differences.
Thank you, John. And Johan, I know, sorry for you to be last, but you have also a unique view on the world as well, don't you, in terms of your solution?
Yeah, well, I think that both Keith and John have given a good example. As you see my resume, I'm an ex-Air Force pilot, and I think the best difference between augmented reality and assisted reality is that augmented reality and virtual reality, to that extent, is flying on a flight simulator. It's training the operational procedures. It's training the exceptions. While if you're in a real flight, then of course the fly first is the guide, fly first and instruments second, and that is the exact same philosophy that we have. So we are also providing assisted reality solutions, so providing the right amount of information when you need it, without losing sight of everything that is around you. This contextual awareness is very crucial in this assisted reality environment. So I think that is the main difference. Assisted reality deals with the real life operations. Augmented reality, and to the extreme virtual reality, is more in the simulation training environment, where the contextual awareness is less important.
Okay, thank you, guys, and I hope that helps the audience out there. I think one thing we've obviously met, and all of these companies are area members, but the one thing we talk a lot about is kind of solving real business problems. And there's no point having this technology for the sake of having this technology. And as I mentioned, these three guys are very keen on that. So I guess the next question I'd like to ask is, we can talk a little bit about some of the use cases, but also I'm really keen to understand the benefits that companies are actually getting, and being a bit more specific about the kind of assisted reality and augmented reality bit. So the question is all about benefits. Johan, I promise you first crack this time. So over to you, youngster.
Well, I think that the main advantage of deploying these type of solutions is enabling, empowering hands-free workers, frontline workers. I think that is the main benefit, the connecting these frontline workers to the rest of the company, and it can be in various use cases. It's an obvious one when you're doing remote assistance. If you have that guy on top of the windmill, he needs some assistance, he can call for a colleague, and that's definitely connecting, sharing this collective knowledge amongst workers. That is definitely one of the advantages of deploying head-mounted devices, enabling access to information, direct information. What was the maintenance history on this type of engine? What is the procedure that you need to follow to disconnect certain pieces? So these type of tasks are enabled by head-mounted devices without having this context switch that you have when you look up this procedure in a manual or even on a tablet. You still have to look at the tablet and then at the engine. With these head-mounted devices, you do not lose your focus. One of our customers is Johnson & Johnson, so it's a frontline worker. In this case, is the scrub technician or the surgeon. And instead of having to look at the manual, they can just look at the procedure, look at the cardiovascular procedure right in front of them, and so they do not have to switch contexts. That is crucial of having this technology. So enabling frontline workers, I think that is the main benefit, and that is irrespective of all the other benefits that have been in COVID-19. Not being able to travel is, of course, something that we all hope is going to disappear, but on the other hand, arriving with the right spare part or immediately giving feedback, that's also the type of benefit that comes with this type of technology.
Fantastic, thank you, Johan. John, certainly on my screen, I've lost your picture, so hopefully you can still hear me. But can you talk a little bit about the benefits and specifically that you see in the RealWear deployments?
Yeah, I can still see everybody, so apologies if the connection is gone, but I can hear you very clearly. So the benefits, as I just started to mention in my intro, first phase, are many and varied, and there is going to be a little bit of repetition as we go through our use case, because clearly Magic Leap and Iristick are doing some similar things. But the way I look at it is probably there's 4 cases which are very clear in terms of the frontline worker. And what's worth pointing out here is, and the epidemic has shown us how important the frontline workers are to our society. Everything that allows our society to function is delivered by somebody out there who's maintaining critical infrastructure, factories, power plants, etc. And I think that focus has allowed us to understand that there are millions of people doing these kind of jobs. But until very recently, digitization is pretty much something that stops where the carpets stop, where the windows stop. And wearable computing, assisted reality, augmented reality, whatever we want to call it, is extending that digitization into clear working environments. So the skilled worker who up to very recently hasn't been able to participate in the richness of communication and information that corporate IT can deliver, can now participate in that. And it might be from something like Microsoft Teams in terms of the collaborative hub in the morning, to the remote mentoring side that we've discussed. But it can be things like, as I mentioned, IoT from a context of factory automation, the digital workflow in enabling a engineer to be very, very compliant to any safety regimes that are in place and to actually learn on the job, and therefore to reduce the training necessary to get a skilled worker out into the field. The remote mentoring that we've discussed, which is so key in terms of helping somebody from a context of a dealership, an automotive dealership. We have a case study with Volkswagen, where they've seen a 93% improvement in terms of fix to major issues in the dealership. And we've also recently seen Ford do something very similar on a global rollout. So automotive is very, very key there as well. And things like document management. Document management basically means that all the information that a frontline worker needs to be available to him is stored locally. So even if there's no connectivity, but by voice control, they can pull up that information in a noisy environment, in a hazardous environment, above the ground, underground, in a desert, in the snow, whatever. So that is very, very important as well. And that information can be documentation, videos, whatever. It is needed to do that job effectively.
Yeah, thanks, John. And just before I go on to Keith, I've had this, and people in the area will probably know this, about the actual term training. I actually think we within the AR kind of ecosystem training will not actually be a word anymore, or it will be in a different context, because people will be able to start with new companies, use this technology and become effective straight away. by following. So actually that whole taking people into training environments and, putting on the shoulder of somebody for a period of time, may, in theory, when the solutions become even better, go away. So I think there's a really interesting bit that we can see rolling out, that we can have effective workers almost immediately. And wouldn't that be great for the kind of performance and the efficiency of companies as well?
I think that's a really good point, just very briefly, because then you're looking at the whole gamut of XR, because VR and augmented reality play a very important part in training. But when you then take that accelerated skill set out into the field, then assisted reality helps to ensure that the right information is delivered, as I mentioned, at the right time. So they are part of the same structure, I would say. Training.
Agree. Yeah, thank you. Keith, let's come on to your good self now and talk about some of the benefits that you, Magic Leap, are realizing.
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. So we focus on two areas. One is what we call Augmented Worker. So, like I was saying earlier, taking that kind of rich data from be it 3D objects, 2D images, videos, or rest of it, and feeding it to, and working with a couple of our partners, like the team over at Tactile, they recently showed some data that there was a 66% reduction in rework and error costs by training people in augmented AR. So I think the training that is well known. There's other stats out there. I saw partner 50% less errors in assembly tasks when training people using augmented reality, those kind of things. The other area that we focus on is the 3D element, so 3D data design and visualization. So in a data way, taking very complex data sets and everything and looking at them in 3D is a great way of understanding it. So yesterday, for instance, I was with a customer and we were looking at a map of New York, and overlaid on top of it was all the flight paths of all the various planes coming in and out, and you could see a representation of the flight path of the plane. It was updating every 10 seconds because it was getting live data in from a server. But just the whole context of understanding where planes were being put in holding patterns. You could see the international ones arriving, everything else. Traditionally what would be quite a complex thing, and if you've ever seen one of those movies where they'll watch them on a 2D screen, you just have masses of dots. Actually looking at it in 3D made a lot more sense. So sometimes bringing in that 3D view allows you to understand, and for us that's a big focus. I'll give you a great example of a use case I was talking with a customer last week about. So going on site for early stages of a hotel construction where you've basically just got concrete walls and floor, empty shell, and being able to walk around and look at BIM data at scale being mapped into the environment you're in. So you're looking up and you're seeing the HVAC run, you're seeing where the cable runs are going, you're seeing where the fire extinguisher systems are being run. But also what you're able to do is then say, okay, I'm on site and I'm looking at this model, but I'm actually going to bring two people into a collaborative meeting. And, because of COVID restrictions, very good example where, a couple of years ago, 6-7 people would meet on site with drawings and all wander around and look at things. Now what's happening is one person's on site, they're wandering around looking at the BIM model in scale, but actually they've got two people joining them in a collaborative meeting as avatars. Walk up and go, look, we've got an issue here. This cable run is way too close to the corner of this HVAC pipe. We need to sort that out. And they're able to kind of mark that, tag that as an issue. And so, whether you're looking at all the kind of facility side, and then you're bringing in Revit models and looking at where we're going to put the walls, where we're going to put the doors, I can go walk through that door and come out of it the other side and think, hang on, I don't see the exit signs if I come through the door at this position. But if the door was 2 feet further across, that would work better. Or it's too near to this pillar, it feels awkward when I walk through the door that I then got to walk around the pillar to get into the office. So all of that, walking around, interacting with objects of scale, equally in kind of retail, actually with a retailer right now, and again because of COVID, what they used to do was they used to make kind of cardboard mock-ups of different point of sale devices, and they would go and place them in a store. They would kind of interact with them and position them, and then they would all stand back and watch people kind of interacting with them. You know, did they work? Did they stick out too much? Do people catch sight of them? All things. Again, very difficult to do right now, but actually using mixed reality, they can place the virtual model in the store, still walk around it, still interact with it, still figure out how it's going to work. But again, not everybody has to all drive for an hour to get to that store. They can have a collaborative meeting where one of them's on site and look at all the different issues. So yes, you know, the COVID restrictions have made a lot of companies rethink, you know, why did 6 of us all used to drive to a particular point and have a meeting? You know, now we can do it with just one of us. But I think then, you know, technology such as Magic Leap can come along and say, okay, well, we can still collaborate. We can still have you there virtually as an avatar. We can still display 3D, you know, models and data sets in front of you as though they were there as physical models. And I think that's, you know, that's where we're seeing a huge uptake in the mixed reality, because, you know, just to kind of roll that through, you couldn't put on a VR headset, which is quite inclusive, and walk around a store. A, because of probably the cable, but even if you used, you know, something, you know, that wasn't tethered like a Quest, you'd bump into things. You need that mixed reality experience to bring in the real world objects and the physicality when you're then trying to look at the you know, the designs and the data. So I think that's you know, where we're focused a lot of our efforts, and I think that's what's going to bring a huge benefit to a lot of industries.
Cool. Thanks, Keith. So just to kind of finish that off, you know, certainly the business leaders out there want to understand, you know, the return on investment with this technology. So that's something we've been really focusing on within the area. So, you know, hopefully over the coming weeks and months, you know, please have a look at www.thearea.org, because we want to collect all of these different use cases, but importantly case studies and the ROI, or the benefits that are being realized. Because, you know, for companies to invest in this technology, they want to understand what problems they can solve, but they want to see other companies doing it. So, and I'm sure we'll have examples from all of these 3 companies, as well as the rest of the area members as well. And any companies out there that are, you know, deploying AR, or AR companies that have got use cases and case studies, please get in touch, because the more we can get this together to help companies invest in this technology, the better. So guys, we're running out of time a little bit, so the next question is going to be a bit quicker, but I want to just talk about the kind of things that companies need to consider before they start to deploy this technology. You know, what kind of infrastructure or other bits. So John, I think it's your turn to start first. Again, a kind of a few bullet points and a few things, because there's quite a lot of questions coming into the chat as well I want to get through. So we're talking about some of the potential barriers or things that need to be considered.
Barriers. Well, some of the biggest barrier probably is understanding that this technology is available, because, you know, we are at an early stage. So I often say my biggest competitor is ignorance of the fact that there is a solution out there. Having said that, there are a lot of software vendors, because my device is an Android device fundamentally. So if it can work on a tablet, it can work on a headset. So barriers to adoption are, as I say, don't know, it's out there. Barriers to adoption are, let's work in a different way to the one we're working in. Barriers to adoption are, is this secure? Once we work through the security aspects in terms of my mobile device management or my enterprise security application, does it work with it? Yes, it does, because it's an Android device. Then it's really about which part of the business is sponsoring this. Is it IT, or is it the business unit? And once that part has been resolved in terms of who is funding this and who is championing it, then most of those barriers to adoption be removed. Oh, and what's really important as well is having, because this is a technology that's being rolled out to many organizations. This is not science experiment. any longer. There are thousands of companies using this kind of technology, and there could be tens of thousands once we overcome the knowledge side of things. Do I have partners available who can help to integrate this? Can they integrate the platform that is RealWear in my case, software, together with the local expertise in terms of a partner? So that's really important as well, having that infrastructure, having that partner base, having that ecosystem out there to make sure that this is effective and rolled out in a very timely way.
Perfect. Thank you, John. I'm going to go to Johan and actually take one of the questions from the audience as well, which I think is a good submit into some of your thoughts. But so this is from Ismail. Is the current infrastructure broad enough to support real-time applications for AR or assisted reality, or do we need online high-speed connectivity? Can you talk a little bit to that and also some of the other barriers that you potentially see?
Yeah, I think that if you look at our customer base, and I think it's the same for the colleagues, definitely infrastructure is sometimes one of the things that you have to take into account when you roll out a project. And it has to do with the quality of the infrastructure, but also with the integration of our devices within that infrastructure. As you know, our device is a second generation phone tethered solution, which means that the device for an IT department, for instance, is just a managed device as any other smartphone that they have in their environment. And so that lowers a little bit the threshold of introducing a new device within the environment. But it's clear that for some of the use cases, let's take remote assistance as the most obvious one, which is a fairly dominant use case. Internet access, Wi-Fi access is one of the crucial elements of that total solution. No matter how good the cameras are on our devices, how good the display is, the internet access is one of the crucial elements of the total solution. And of course, there is quite some evolution on that respect as well. We have some trials running with 5G, for instance, that are very promising to have this stable internet connection. But it is clear that that is one of the barriers for entry. Now, that is the case for remote assistance, but if you look at digital workflow that has been described by John, for instance, that can be done completely offline. So we can have an asynchronous case in that respect. So you just follow the digital procedure on your device, and the result of the procedure, the things that you have annotated, the thing that you have stored, can then be asynchronously uploaded to the maintenance file. So in that respect, you do not have the infrastructure. So it depends a little bit on the use case, whether the infrastructure is a crucial element. For remote assistance, definitely the internet is a thing to take into account. But for other use cases, it just relies on the quality of the device.
Perfect, Johan. And Keith, just a quick comment on some of the barriers.
Similar kind of lines. You know, I kind of break it down quite. Like you say, are you connecting via Wi-Fi? Are you connecting via 4G, 5G? You know, that's the first thing, is that connection. And then, okay, so the wearable device, where's the data coming from? Is that coming from my, you know, back end ERP, MRP system? Is it my CAD models? Is it, you know, video servers? Or, you know, where's the data coming from? How are we getting the data to the device? Figuring those two things out you know, are fundamental to making sure it's effective, because otherwise it just becomes you know, a dumb unconnected device. So the connected bit, both from, you know, the connection point of view of the Wi-Fi.
Is it just me, or is Keith frozen?
No, Keith is frozen also for me.
Oh, Keith, you're back.
Did I go?
Yeah,
I'm back. Sorry, not sure how much you got of that, but I was just summarizing, saying yes, it's about the connection to the device, and then it's about the connection into the data. Where's the data coming from?
perfect. Thank you. And just kind of finally on that, you know, one of the things that the area is doing is bringing the members together to look at some of the barriers to adoption. So to give you an idea, we have a number of different committees, which again, committees are monthly meetings, an opportunity for all the area members to come together. But on some of the other barriers to adoption we see, so things like security, safety, human factors, you know, making sure the UX and UI are as good as they can be in creating some kind of global shared thinking on that. We also have a research committee, which is allowing the members to suggest different research projects, which they then vote on, and we deliver a whole bunch of research in all sorts of different ways. And in fact, we're doing one on 5G and AR at the moment. So, I think it's important that we do work together as an ecosystem to overcome some of these barriers, but also help, the companies understand what they are and plan and deliver appropriately for them. So I think we're getting pretty close to the end, guys. I think there's a really nice question here from Martin. It says, the value of these technologies have been highlighted throughout the pandemic. Do you expect to see a sustained increase in use of AR in industrial enterprise as things move back to normal? Or is there still risk that returns being underused? So basically, going forward, is AR still going to be something that companies are talking about? I'm going to throw that out real quick for someone to have a quick go at. I've certainly got a view on that, but who'd like to go?
Let me take that. I think the new normal is going to be where we are. People are not going to go back to offices in the same way as they did before. If it's 40%, 60%, whatever, people have learned the fact that they don't have to fly any longer. So using the technology to become time space is something that we're going to see used more and more in the future. Is my take on it.
Yeah, I can add to that. That I think if you
Fully
look at
agree.
our customer
I was just going to
base,
say yes.
yeah, if you look at our customer base,
Yeah,
the largest deployments are pre-COVID-19
people have adopted it. Companies have rolled it out. People have got the hang of using the technology. Yeah, it's fundamentally changed and will continue to change.
Good. Go on, Johan, sorry.
Yeah, I agree on that one. Like I said, if you look at our current customer base, the largest deployments are pre-COVID-19 deployments. So people are really believing that this needle has permanently shifted.
Yeah, and I'll just finally on that kind of point, I absolutely agree with what everyone said about that. I think what we're seeing now, and we've spoken about this kind of offline, is that the cost of ownership when it comes to the software and the hardware solutions are now been increasing, because not only can you do remote assistance because of the COVID, but companies are now saying, well, I've got this device, I can now do this and do that. So actually, there's a great benefit to the company where they can use the device and the software platforms for a whole raft of different use cases. And again, that's one of the things that the area is going to be focusing on, is helping explain these use cases so companies get a clear idea of what problems can be solved. So on that note, I believe, Alex, we've run out of time. I want to certainly thank Keith, John, and Johan for joining in. I hope the audience has found that useful. My apologies if we haven't answered all the questions, but feel free to reach out to myself, and I'll certainly get these contacts. These guys answer any questions. But yeah, have a little look. Here we go. Get it on, Keith, quick.
Oh, sorry, I grabbed mine. Yeah.
Perfect. There you go. And these things are happening in companies all over the world now. So, Alex, back to you, and good luck for the rest of the conference, and hopefully see you in person next year for a pint of Guinness or two.
Indeed.
Looking forward to that one.